feel more mercenary about this? I think they do. I think BP had just signed a multi-billion-dollar contract to go back into Libya, and I think the French would love to get in there. So I think maybe they have more oil on the brain. But I think for Obama, it's the big geopolitical picture of ensuring U.S. influence and dominance in this larger area, but not specifically to get, a crude oil picture. Okay. Let me try to get more students before I. Yeah. And you're next.
I want to know what's missing in our culture that we don't start living more sustainably. I know when people started getting cars back in like the 20s and before that they would carry gasoline with them in the car until they could find a gas station because the infrastructure wasn't provided. What's stopping us from doing the same with like ethanol?
I can't speak for you.
Restate the question, please.
Why don't students and young people live more sustainably? I can't speak for you. My impression is, first of all, we all live in a culture that's saturated by the media that projects images of how to live, and it's a lot about going to the mall and driving to movie theaters. So it's sort of ingrained in our consciousness, and it's very hard to resist. And I'm not blaming anybody because I do it too. And my son, who's 23 and just graduated from college, does. So it's hard to resist behaviors that are ingrained and that have been, until now, have been facilitated by cheap oil. Oil in this country is cheap. It's 2 or 3 times as much in England, in Europe, and in Japan. I think those days are over. But it was facilitated by, I believe, artificially low price of energy. Now, that's going to come to an end. And I think that everybody is going to become much more conscious about saving energy and moving in a sustainable direction. I recognize this young man all in the back. You're next.
My question is regarding the tar sands.
Yeah.
You're talking about the pipeline coming down through the Americas, like crossing over the
Yeah,
main,
Keystone XL, it's called. Yeah. Everybody should know the name.
across the main water resource. My question is there any plans at all to move refineries maybe from not being down in Texas to up to the northern states, where it wouldn't have to be such a far long pipeline to go over that huge amount of fresh water that they have?
You could take that up with the oil companies. I'll tell you, it's an interesting story why they're there and not up there. They're there because a lot of our imported oil, especially from Venezuela, we've been dependent on Venezuelan oil for a very, very long time. And Venezuelan oil is very heavy. It's called heavy oil. It has a lot of sulfur. So, and in fact, PDVSA owns some of those refineries. City Services is owned by PDVSA, was. They own a lot of those refineries. So they're much more expensive to build those refineries. So the Canadians would rather that we bore that cost than they invest in that. So it's cheaper to build a pipeline than to invest in a very expensive refinery that can only process that very heavy oil. That's my understanding in answer to your question. So sure, if you want to go up to Canada and lobby the government up there to build it, be my guest. Yes, I recognize you. And then I'll go over you. Yeah, please.
What do you mean when you say that the price of oil has been artificially low in the past? What does that mean?
I think there are a lot of hidden costs. A lot of hidden costs. For example, we spend approximately $150 billion a year on the military to protect the flow of oil from the Middle East. So you pay that on your federal taxes to the Department of Defense, to the Central Command, to protect the oil infrastructure. If you add the cost of the war in Iraq, some of which is specifically specifically protecting pipelines and refineries, some of which has is doing other things. So we'd have to have a discussion. We've spent now $1 trillion, 2/3 of $1 trillion on the war in Iraq towards ultimately $3 trillion cost. What percent of that is about oil? And we could have a very nice discussion around room. I'd like to have that. But let's say half of it is about oil, in some sense. So that would add that up. It's $2 or $3 a gallon that we're paying on our taxes. We pay for the interstate highway system and highway construction on in other ways. So there are all kinds, and that doesn't include the environmental damage being done. So, and economists are increasingly beginning to understand that you have to add those additional costs into your GNP. Or subtract them from your, in some way. So substantially increased. Yes, you, and then you.
Yeah, I would like to go back to the topic of quality of life. So I wonder what would your suggestions be in order to make a quick transition to that misleading picture of life?
Say that again, please.
What would your suggestions be in order to change our conception of what a good life is?
I think this is the task of young architects and landscape designers and city planners and interior designers and fashion designers and image makers and movie makers and scientists, energy scientists, to envision cities and towns that are really cool to live in, but that are highly energy efficient. I've had the good fortune to see such presentations in other countries, and I know that if you go to any architecture school, big architecture school, you'll find people doing that.
Could you share one presentation that you saw?
I saw one by the mayor of Curitiba, Brazil, who is an architect and who has turned his city, it's a city of 1 million people in Brazil, into a green city by building micro parks in abandoned lots, by, he invented the idea, if you've heard of the term bus rapid transit, where you have buses that have bus lane only on platforms. He's gotten 1 million cars off the street. I saw some of the designs were incredible. He's been hired to design the plans for Rio de Janeiro for the what's coming there, the Olympics. What's it? World Cup.
And the Olympics.
And the Olympics.